Richard, tell us now, though, a year later, Russia's military has had setback after setback. Tell us what you think President Biden's visit to Kyiv means at this moment in the war.
Well, Jonathan, the president's visit to Kyiv is an important message. It's a message to Putin, who has basically based his policy that time is on his side, that maybe not. That the United States, despite the fact, for example, we got out of Afghanistan in a hurried, messy way, the United States has staying power here. So that's a really important message. It's also an important message to the allies. They were concerned about the midterm elections. It's one of the questions that kept coming up in Munich was, is the United States, do we have here enough bipartisan support to stay the course? So I think the president going to Kyiv doesn't settle that problem once and for all. Ideally, funnily enough, it would have been great had he showed up with Senator McConnell or somebody like that who's very strongly in support of the war. But again, it sends a reassuring message to Ukraine about American staying power, which, Jonathan, is critical for Europe. Europe has followed behind and with the United States for the most part. This is not leading from behind. This is leading from ahead, and that's what's required in this instance.
We're now past 6 o'clock. Welcome to Morning Joe at this moment. Joe, Mika, and Willie have the day off. I want to bring in Katty Kay, special U.S. correspondent for BBC News, into our coverage here, our live rolling coverage of this President's Day and President Biden's surprise trip to Ukraine, one meant to show a real symbol of solidarity, Katty, with Kyiv, as it has weathered Russia's invasion now for 12 months.
Yeah, Jonathan, what a day for us all to kick off President's Day to see these images. We know that President Biden has wanted to go to Kyiv for a while, and he just had to wait on his security team to give him the OK. And it's partly a vindication of the situation in Kyiv that his security team felt it is OK, that it is safe enough for him to visit on this Monday morning, this surprise visit. But there's also a lot going on, of course, in Europe ahead of this anniversary. We've got the Munich Security Conference that's just wrapped up this weekend, which was effectively the Americans and the Europeans rallying more support for the Ukrainians. And Richard Haass, as you look at these images, yes, the symbolism, very powerful for the Ukrainians. This is a message of support for Ukraine. It's a message of defiance to Vladimir Putin and against Russia. What do you think it means in practice for Volodymyr Zelensky, that man just there who's shaking Joe Biden's hand? What does it mean for him in practice?
Well, I think what it means in practice is he can expect American military and economic support to continue to flow. I think he can also expect that from the Europeans, even though the delivery of economic help has fallen short of the promises. I think the big question is what will be the impact of it. So just say he gets all the tanks, just say he gets the airplanes, what then? To what extent will it change the shape of the battlefield? Because ultimately, that's what counts the most. I'm sorry, there's alarms going off here.
Okay.
The real question...
Richard, we'll let you deal with those alarms, because you've clearly got alarms. Everyone's got alarms going off everywhere. There have been alarms going off, of course, all around Ukraine with that visit as well. But let's bring in former aide to George W. Bush's White House and State Department's Elise Jordan. Because, Elise, I was thinking, as I saw these images and got the first tweets that Joe Biden had landed in Kyiv, the amount of organization it takes to pull something like this off in a war zone, the security people that have to have the buy-in to do this. Just talk to us a little bit about the backstory of how he would have actually got there.
Well, the closest parallel that I can remember, in recent decades is probably President Bush when he made the Thanksgiving visit in 2003 to an American military base in Iraq. And that was shrouded in intense secrecy, but at the end of the day was at a U.S. military base. And that's what is so impressive and unprecedented about this trip, that Joe Biden not just landed, he had to get on a train and take the same, he didn't. We don't know yet about the security arrangements, but it definitely is not just your typical mission that the Secret Service goes from point A to point B and gets to. The advance work that simply goes into a trip like this, and how many agents would go ahead of time. And I can't imagine how long they've been thinking about this and envisioning it and had a bunch of moving pieces, and yet they finally gave the go-ahead to say this can happen.
Yeah, President Biden has wanted to do this for a while, has talked out of it by senior aides in Secret Service. There was some talk last summer when he was in Europe for NATO that maybe he'd attach a visit to Ukraine then. He did not. We know that other world leaders have taken that 10-hour train ride to Kyiv. We do not yet know how President Biden made this journey. We're not going to know. U.S. officials have told us until he is safely out of the country. So that may be some hours before we can report as to how this president has made his way to Kyiv. Let's bring in now, back into the conversation, NBC News chief international correspondent Keir Simmons, who is in Moscow. Keir, give us a sense as to what this means to this moment in the war, that they're in Russia, a war that has gone nowhere near as they planned, though they still do own about 20% of Ukraine's territory at this point and show no signs of giving up their mission to topple Kyiv.
Oh, yeah, there's no sign at all, Jonathan, of any compromise by President Putin, who the Kremlin says is currently working on a speech, a keynote speech that he will give tomorrow. That's his big moment of symbolism, if you like. But at the same time, he will now be, if he's got his television on, be watching these pictures as he works on his speech, because Russian television just began to show these images. They actually went to special report and began to show these images of President Biden and President Zelensky together in Kyiv, and really just reporting the facts that are being reported by U.S. media, because quite extraordinarily, I think, the White House and the president of the office of the Ukrainian president have managed to keep this unknown even to the Russians, and we know that because we hear a lot from the Russians and from Russian journalists on, for example, the Telegram app. Telegram channels are used to talk about everything that's going on in the conflict, but there was no indication at all in the build-up to this news emerging that President Biden is in Ukraine. There was no sign at all that the Russians had any clue that was what was coming. I imagine it will infuriate President Putin. Remember, Jonathan, that this is where he wanted to be a year ago. A year ago, we now know, he had hoped that his invasion would move very swiftly. His special military operation, as he calls it, would quickly get to the capital city of Ukraine. And frankly, he would have pictured himself standing there in Kyiv, just as President Biden is standing next to a different leader of Ukraine and kind of wrapping up his mission, if you like, to change Ukraine. Instead, he hasn't been able to do that. You're right, of course, he has managed to move forces into a large area of Donbass, but that's far short of what he had hoped for. And now what Russia is doing is fighting a war of attrition. It is hoping to continue to keep going and see the West lose interest or lose enthusiasm. And of course, what this trip by President Biden, Jonathan, is designed to do is to maintain that enthusiasm, maintain the support in America and in the West for the conflict that the White House describes as a defining conflict for the world, not just for Ukraine, not just here in Russia.